Following World War I and the defeat of Austria-Hungary, the remnants of its territories had to be now divided by the dominant European powers at the time. Bound by a flimsy understanding of the deep tensions between the different religions and ideologies of the Slavs that inhabited the Balkan areas, however, the governments of Western Europe following World War I figured it would be a great idea to combine all of these Balkan states into one, called Yugoslavia. This was a recipe for disaster, and in the early hours of the 6th of April 1941, the Axis blitzed Yugoslavia and captured Belgrade in less than 12 days, ultimately taking 300,000 Yugoslav officers prisoner. Having a relatively better understanding of the Balkans, however, when Nazi high command were deciding what to do with their newly acquired land and how to best control it, the most natural idea was to use the pre-existing Croatian fascist party, known as the Ustaše, to act as a Nazi puppet state and spread terror and tyranny around the Balkans in the name of the fascist cause. And that's exactly what they did, with their actions in World War II causing a divide that's still visible today. Engaged in terrorist and violent activities before the dawn of World War II in the name of Croatian Catholic nationalism, the Ustaše were the natural choice for Axis high command when it came to who should run the Balkans. The Nazis, not really caring about the fate of the people within the Balkans, essentially left the Ustaše and their leader Ante Pavelić with free reign of the area, essentially letting them do whatever as long as they upheld order and discipline and shut down political dissidents. Although the Ustaše still had a problem with the Nazis because they were considered inferior to them, the Croatian leaders of the fascist movement tried to raise their political standing within the Axis by creating a theory about the pseudo-Gothic origin of the Croats, hence making them seem more Aryan, even though this wasn't true. Anyway, the Croatian Ustaše, now feeling secure in their power, and with the World War II fronts on the east and west at this point in history being quite far away from them, they now figured it would be a good time to begin their reign of death and destruction to all groups they deemed deserving. According to Ustaše theory, Serbian Orthodox Christians were public enemy number one, and even though they claimed to be Catholic nationalists, the Ustaše Croats professed that they were absolutely fine with Bosnian Muslims, stating that they were just ethnic Croatians who converted to Islam during the Ottoman Turk occupation of Bosnia. At this point, the stage is pretty much set. The spotlight is shining on the eastern and western fronts of the war. The Ustaše is allied with the Bosnian Muslim SS units and has the backing of the Nazi party, and pretty much everyone outside the Balkans doesn't care what happens within. Ante Pavelić proceeds to publicly proclaim his racial policy on July 22nd, 1941, and that same month, work on the concentration camps of the Balkans begin. The Ustaše secret police also begin carrying out the violent anti-Serb, anti-Jew, and anti-Roma racial policy and begin the initial mass murders in the region, though they were committing them way before the proclamation of the racial policy. As word of these horrific injustices spread, many Serbs and various other ethnic groups joined the Allied-backed Chetniks or the communist-based partisans and began guerrilla warfare against the Ustaše. Nevertheless, the Ustaše continued their indiscriminate and oftentimes horrific killings of all those deemed enemies, and they were particularly brutal when it came to Serbs, who they often sadistically tortured. A Gestapo report sent to Himmler on the 17th of February 1942 even betrays a hint of disgust at the actions of the Ustaše, where the anonymous Gestapo officer states, "Increased activity of the bands of rebels is chiefly due to atrocities carried out by Ustaše units in Croatia against the Orthodox population. The Ustaše committed their deeds in a bestial manner, not only against males of conscript age, but especially against helpless old people, women, and children. The number of Orthodox that the Croats have massacred and sadistically tortured to death is about 300,000. The Italian and German regular occupation force also began to express quiet disgust as they became witness to the ways of the Ustaše. As early as July 10th, even before the proclamation of the racial policy, Wehrmacht General Edmund Kaiser von Horstenau reported the following to German High Command. Our troops have been mute witnesses of such events. It does not reflect well on their otherwise high reputation. I am frequently told that German occupation troops would finally have to intervene against Ustaše crimes. This may happen eventually. Right now, with the available forces, I could not ask for such action. Ad hoc intervention in individual cases could make the German army look responsible for countless crimes for which it could not prevent in the past. At one point, the Italians even got so sick of the Ustaše and their violent ambition in the regions of territory they were competing with, that they actually cooperated with the Allied-backed Chetnik units on the field. Despite Hitler's pleas to work with the Ustaše instead, the senior Italian commanders ignored this and continued to work with the Chetniks. As the violence continued, however, much like the Nazis, the Ustaše found a better way to kill their political opponents, and the Jasenovec death camp became operational in August of 1941. The Jasenovec death camp was the largest and now most well-known camps that the Ustaše built in the Balkan regions. The exact number of victims is not known due to the lack of documentation. However, throughout its management, historians estimate no less than 300,000 Serbs, 32,000 Jews, and 40,000 Roma were killed in these camps, with many pointing out that the number of Serbs killed was in actuality closer to 700,000. There is still much debate on the exact number of people killed by the Ustaše during their reign of terror, but the fact still remains that they killed and tortured at least hundreds of thousands, forcibly converted many more to Catholicism, and forced thousands upon thousands to flee their homeland. The role of the Catholic Church in the workings of the Ustaše is still a fiercely debated topic, with some claiming that they simply used it as an opportunity to spread its influence eastward, and others claiming it was entirely innocent and silently worked against fascism during its reign. The truth will likely never be known in its full capacity, but the fact remains that the Croatian Ustaše were a tyrannical and disgusting regime that exploited its newfound power to enact violence against the Slavic peoples who had a different religion, namely the Serbs. They hid behind the curtains of violence on both sides of Europe to enact their own flavor of it in the shadows. In the end, Ante Pavelić's goal of a Croatian ethno-state failed, and so did his racial policy of 1/3 of Serbs converted to Catholicism, 1/3 expelled, and 1/3 killed. Following World War II, many Ustaše high officers fled the country, and the rest who were still convicted to the cause formed terrorist cells that had impacts for decades to come. In 1957, after fleeing to Argentina, Ante Pavelić was eventually tracked down by a Serbian and injured by an assassination attempt. He didn't survive the injury, however, and died a slow, painful, and ultimately deserving death. So just as we end this video, guys, I want to point out that, of course, this generation of Croatians can't be blamed for the crimes of their ancestors, and there was some good in the bad, the classic yin and yang. There was also that bit of good in that whole wave of evil. So obviously not all Croatians were part of the Ustaše, but I just wanted to acknowledge that the history is there, it did happen, and yeah, it was a pretty bad time for all involved in the Balkan regions. Also, there are some really dark pictures of actual Ustaše crimes and stuff like that, but we couldn't really show it in the video for fear of demonetization. But in saying that, we do have our Discord where you can come through and we can share whatever we want. So we've got a ton of really good memes that you can laugh your head off to, and we can also post these pictures there if you do want to take a look. So make sure you check that out. And we also do have a Facebook page that I've really got to get onto, that we're growing at the moment. And yeah, I just want to give a big thank you to all of my recent patrons. The patrons growing at quite a nice rate. And I just want to welcome all the new subscribers here as well. Anyways, guys, make sure you check out all those links in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.